This is the Deliberate Talks Weekly Podcast, powered by the Pixelated Egg Digital Ventures. Tune in every week to learn something new about digital marketing and entrepreneurship. And now, over to the voice of your host, Dakshin Adyantaya. Enjoy the show.
Hello. Welcome to yet another Monday with an uber fresh episode of the Deliberate Talks podcast. And this is me, Dakshin Adyantaya, who's flabbergasted by our guest's recent work so much that I decided that I have to have him on my show to talk about his beautiful creation. So gear up for an episode filled with storytelling, hidden theories, and the journey of filmmaking. But before that, here are some few insights about today's conversation. On an average, India produces more than 2,000 films and a plethora of television shows and series in over 20 languages each year, making it a large content-producing country in the world. The value of the film industry in India in the financial year 2020 was about 183 billion Indian rupees, states Statista. Further, the massive investment made by OTT services like Netflix, Amazon, Disney Plus Hotstar, and others in the originals as well as acquired content will help subscription video on demand make up to 93% of total OTT revenue, increasing a compound annual growth rate of 30.7% between 2019 and 2024. In the year 2020, Netflix, Amazon, and Hotstar poured in billions of rupees into producing edgy, Indian-specific original content in a variety of regional languages. They spent nearly $520 million to create content for the Indian audiences. That's $100 million more than what they spent in 2019, according to Forresters. And now, more about films, online streaming content, and more with our guest today, who's an Indian film director who has worked predominantly in the Tamil movie industry. His work includes Kalki, a Tamil short film released in 2017, where he contributed as the director and writer. His recent film Mara, featuring R. Madhavan and Shraddha Srinath in the lead roles, has been one of the talked about cinemas on social media and the critics this year. Here's introducing Dhilip Kumar. Hello, Dhilip.
Hello, hi Dakshin. Very nice to meet you.
Welcome to the Deliberate Talks podcast.
My pleasure.
Great. Dhilip, firstly, massive congratulations for the success of Mara. I've been actively seeing the entire cast engage with the audience on Twitter since a couple of weeks now. Interestingly, when I was researching, you as a director came into the film in 2018, after almost 2 years of the film being announced with multiple directors, actors, and crew. Firstly, tell me a little bit about your work with your previous film like Kalki, and how did Mara happen to you?
So I was working as a designer. So that used to be my profession. My stream is experience design, to design spaces and like technologically powered spaces, like unmanned theater experience, likes. Yeah. So at one point, like I quit my job and I was in touch with Promote Films, and we had a sync. Like when it came to films, like we were looking at films in the same way, and we had a lot to share. We were spending a lot of time, and Pratik Chakravarti, who is the CEO of Pramod Films, like he suggested that we make a small film, not necessarily a short film, but a small film, and that's how Kalki happened. And they were shooting another film, a feature film, and they had one set where inside that one interior space he wanted to make a film.
Okay.
So that was a very curious offer, and it's exciting when you have one space, like which is like say it's an interior house setup, and we had 4 days of budget to shoot a film within 4 days.
Wow.
And so that was kind of exciting, and it was not meant to be on Netflix or anything initially. So just for the love of filmmaking, and when there is a mutual interest between a producer and a writer, I wouldn't say writer director also back then, because it was just we were just friends, and he suggested we try out a film.
Right.
And that was very exciting. And by the time I got done with Kalki, we were able to shoot the film completely inside The 95%, 99% of the film happens inside one single set.
Oh.
And after that, as producers, they were also proactive enough. Shruti Nallappa, who is a co-producer in Pramod Film, that was proactive enough to sell the film as well. And that came to a good end. And by then, like since I was connected to them, I knew that they had bought rights to Charlie, which had come, and I also knew what they were trying to do with Charlie. So both of them, they were interested in adapting this film into something else rather than doing a frame-to-frame remake.
Right.
So that was kind of exciting for me. And when there were a couple of directors who tried to do it, and then it didn't work out between the production house, the star, and the directors, then they asked me if I can give it a try. And by then, like I also had an approach to the film, and that was quite an interesting approach. Like it would have been like as a project, it would have been much more interesting because we were trying to do a complete different adaptation of Charlie to something else, and that kind of excited them. And I was apprehensive about remakes generally, just like a lot of us, right? Like so. So that's how it started. And by the time I finished writing it, director was not in place. And then when you are a writer and selling it to another director, a production house selling it to another director, bringing a director on board who also buys your script, is a complex process, right? As a writer, you have this nervousness, and as a production house, they have the nervousness. So my transition of coming into this film as a writer, it was an opportunity around that time, and I had also left my job, and then it was a good gig for me, you know, both in terms of practice and also in terms of money. You know, like you're practicing your skill as well as like you're getting paid as a writer. And by the time I finished writing it, I was kind of got into the film completely.
Right. Amazing. So basically, you were destined to do the film. So, I've seen Charlie, I've seen Mara as well. Like you rightly mentioned, it's not a remake. It's actually a adaptation, and both the films have its own different vibe. And with Mara, you have added your own flavor of storytelling, which makes the film really beautiful. Many went obviously on social media and said Mara is not about the original. Now, a film like Charlie, young, energetic, a successful film like that, which is liked by a lot of people. And here you are with R. Madhavan, a man who has his own charm and very different from the original film character like Charlie. And there was also a story where you wanted to stick to Madhavan in spite of the multiple directors and the crews changing in when you took over the film. So, what was the process like in 2018 when you took over, and how did you finalize this perfect cast for the film?
Okay, so first of all, like there was one constant. So when there are non-negotiables, sometimes it's a headache and sometimes it's a blessing in disguise.
Right.
So when I came into write, I knew that one constant in the film is Madhavan.
Right.
Madhavan, Pramod Films, and an adaptation of Charlie. These are the constants that I had. So now things become easier, no, at some level. And also when you have an actor like Madhavan, like like you've followed his work, you've grown up watching him, so you know like what exactly works and how to take it forward, and you have your own ideas about it. That I think is the base ground on which everything else came. But we were very sure not to cast anybody, not to bring in any of the crew members before we finished the script.
Okay.
Maybe we had our ideas, but then we didn't approach anybody. We wanted to be sure that everything works well in the first place as of the script is concerned, and then you can be sure of whom to cast. And as of Shraddha, after I came into the project, we weren't wavering about like whom to cast for the female protagonist. We kind of knew the kind of person we wanted, and we had a lot of auditions. Before I came in, there were a couple of other actors who were considered to play the female protagonist.
Right.
But that was for remake of Charlie, not for Mara. So with Mara, we had proper auditions. I would say screen tests, because like you are going with some well-known actors like who know what they are doing and who have delivered. Those are the kind of people we met, and I also explained that we would like to do a screen test and then go ahead with speaking about the engagement. And to my surprise, they were all very receptive. Like one misconception that broke, I had the misconception, and a lot of others also had this misconception. When people have done a lot of films, you can't call them for a screen test. But that isn't true. When your intentions are right and when you are able to communicate where you are coming from, I think people are all completely open to it,
Right.
because it comes from a well-intentioned place. Like where Shraddha's role is like every day on set, there are hardly any scenes without the female protagonist in
Right.
this film.
Right.
So they need to be comfortable. And one thing is, there is no power equation here. So as much as you are judging them,
Mhm.
as much as you are trying to understand the rapport that you would have with them, they are also evaluating you
Right.
and your production. All the other main characters, for example, Mr. Mauli's character, as we were writing, we were very sure it has to be Mauli.
Okay.
There are things like I'm a huge fan of his work, both as a director, writer, and an actor. But I think as an actor, I don't get enough of him. Like I haven't gotten enough of him from the film.
Mhm.
But every time he comes, I watch him in a film. There is a yearning that he leaves you with.
Right.
It's very rare to watch actors who become characters and stay away. Like off-screen persona doesn't take over their character persona.
Mhm.
And I say it is rare because what they are bringing in, what especially Mr. Mowgli brings in, he's not trying to do what Christian Bale does or
Mm.
Kamala Hassan does. Like we're completely getting into a character physically and changing your voice, changing your looks, and he doesn't do that.
Mhm.
He is going to be Mowgli at some level.
Mm.
Okay. But coming across as a character and not as Mowgli, you are still just Mowgli on screen. It's really, really tough. You could argue that it's also subjective, but that's what films are about, right? Like it's a like if you have written it, it's subjectively it's working for you. And his casting happened that way, and Madan was like totally happy when he heard about Mowgli, suggested Mowgli to him.
They did
Right.
a film last 2003 together.
That's right.
Right.
And Mowgli was a director in that film. So,
Mm.
and they go back also, like before that and after that, and they share a relationship off screen as well.
Right.
And I seriously hoped that transpires on screen as well.
Mm. Absolutely. Also, Dilip, there were multiple videos post the film. The film leaves you with a lot of thinking in terms of the beautiful scenes and certain hidden messages within the scenes. There are multiple videos showcasing small details in the film which were in continuity. Say the color schemes of the clothes, the lighting, the paintings on the wall, various things that's not easily noticeable in the very first time when you watch the film. That's why you feel like watching the film again and again to decode the whole process. I personally did that, and as I watch the film again and again, I do realize there are a lot of things that go unnoticeable in the very first instance. As a director, do you plan these detailing, or how do you really come up with such things when you're thinking of the script or an adaptation, or even the flow of the structure of the film?
Okay, so I think it's part of the process. Like you're paid for that. Like what is your role as a director? That's where everything comes from. And film in general, movies are in general is a very very important medium, right? And it is one of those very few form of art. Yeah, I'm very skeptical to use a word like art, but then yeah, it is art at multiple levels, right?
Right.
So when it comes to a film, like many people have already quoted, it's editing that is very native to films,
Mm-hmm.
right? One of the people to speak it out, and his quote is remembered till date, is Stanley Kubrick, who says like only editing belongs to film. Other than that, you bring in performance from theater,
Right.
you bring music from music,
Right.
and production design is nothing but art
Mhm.
basically, like an art direction
Mm.
it's itself like it can survive on its own. So all these other form of art that you are bringing in, you are just being a manager.
Right.
After you have written, you're a manager where you're bringing in a musician, you're bringing in a cinematographer. So it's an amalgamation of different art, and people who are there to perform are artists, like proper artists,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like there is a respect that has to be given, and you have to put them all together and make them create a canvas for them to work on.
Right.
And so I think once you are done with your script, the script is the guide. So basically, you go back to your guide and put out an instruction to each one of these people out there of what they have to bring to a particular scene, particular sequence, and a particular shot even.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where it comes from, and it's not something to be very proud of. Rather, it is the duty. That is filmmaking.
Right. Absolutely. When you see those kind of scenes, now for example, I saw a video which highlights the calendar as simple as the detailing in the background, which talks
Mhm.
about the entire sequence of how the film is going from right from the Christmas to all the way till the end of the film, where even the mood boards and everything is going in sync with as basic detail as something as a calendar, which is in the background, not easily noticeable by people. Also painting on the wall there to what Mara has in his house in form of a statue. All those kind of details, how does that sink into the conversation that you're telling me right now?
So that it becomes a mechanical work and nothing else. Like there is a calendar hung,
Hmm.
okay, and continuity is a very essential part, right? There is your script that dictates the chronology of the film, the
Hmm.
time period of the film, and the relationship between one scene and the other, right? So there are two things here. One is one when you're asking about calendar and the continuity over there. I think it is essential. Only when it is wrong, you got to point it out and ask like why doesn't it sum up to what the narrative is promising?
Hmm.
The narrative would sometimes tell you that yeah, the film's happening in 2 years, but the January of the first year and the January of the next year
Hmm.
within the film can't have a calendar. Like that's totally wrong, right? Like
Right.
I think it's a basic necessity when it comes to continuity,
Hmm.
and continuity is the main is one thing that goes for a toss every time,
Right.
and there is a continuity AD who takes care of it.
Right.
So it's actually great that you start off with calendar because calendar is very data oriented.
Hmm.
Okay, so it's an information that you are delivering. So
Hmm.
you can't go wrong there at all. And what is more complex when it comes to continuity and these detailing is you have your own aesthetics,
Hmm.
and how are you gonna give a continuity to that aesthetic is the whole question.
Hmm.
So with Mara and films like Mara, which is placed somewhere between realism and fantasy, right?
Right.
So it's not a fantasy film genre wise, but then this is not the world that you cruise around every day.
Absolutely.
So so when you are trying to create a world out there which is of your own, then the same house needs to be lit differently for different scenes.
Hmm.
But source of that light is definitely going to be provided by your environment.
Right.
So if a leakage of street light into your house is going to be there, then it has to believably be there even for your next scene in that same house, in that same setup.
Hmm.
But you also got to crack your mood,
Right.
right?
Right.
So that's where I think like there is a little complication that comes in where you want to give your mood to a particular scene, but you can't be doing random things like in different scenes
Hmm.
throughout.
Hmm.
So there I think aesthetics comes to play, where if you freeze two frames from that happens in two different points in the film in the same setup, but you should be able to be convinced that okay, so it is looking like this,
Hmm.
it is looking like this on this particular day.
Hmm.
So you got to have that. Otherwise, it is not to put yourself out and make the world look at you. Rather, all the effort is directed only towards not throwing the audience off.
Right. Because this is
Okay.
very much noticeable in a lot of films. A lot of detailing misses out, and people kind of catch that and they kind of put it on social media saying things that the film goofed up. And
Right.
speaking about continuity in its whole, as
Mhm.
an option, say the calendar itself is a character now in your story. If I have to look at it because it's helping the story move in a timeline, you had the option of not having the calendar and continuing the story in its own way, right? But you
Mhm.
involved in it. So that's one of the skill sets in terms of nurturing a storytelling format. Now tell me, Dilip, how do you really nurture this skill of storytelling through your lenses as a director? And where can one learn the skills? What is required to acquire these kind of skill sets of storytelling?
I think everybody has different search. There is no one single answer or an advice to this. Like whether you go to a school, a formal training, or if you are a self learner, even being an AD, like when you're just an AD, you haven't had a qualified studies like film related studies. We all are storytellers in the very first place. But where we differ is like what kind of a storyteller you are. When you're narrating a story to your friend who's next to you, what are the things that you concentrate on? If you're interested in the story itself, and if your story is filled with twists and turns, then like let's say like there are four twists in your story. There are few storytellers like who are, for them it's those four twists are the key. Okay, so at every turn, at every twist, they want to amaze you. The story is built in such a way, the narration is built in such a way that is walking and acquiring things and doing things in itself, so that the listener is taken aback at those four places.
Right.
That's a kind of storytelling. So what kind of a storyteller you are is an important question. And humor is a huge key for somebody, for few people, and they don't need twists and turns. They don't need a story even. It's just the humor that carries the story. So what kind of a storyteller you are is a question. And for me, it's not like that. Like rather, I look at it as, okay, I'm a storyteller, and maybe I could be right now with just 1-2 films old. Yeah, I still believe I can tell a completely different story. All I have to get into is get into the skin of it, and so that like you can shift between genres, and there involves a study of what is your understanding of that genre. If you are handling horror, if you are handling comedy and a romantic subject or a drama like Mara, you can be a different storyteller. You can be a storyteller with multiple flavors in you.
Right.
Okay, but it is not to be mistaken as emulating what has been done. Like you can watch a number of horror films and derive a template out of it easily. But where do you come in as a filmmaker? Where do you come in as a storyteller? Is what you interpret from those.
Right.
Is where you become a filmmaker. And I think that's what interests me, and what I firmly, the kind of films that has attracted me, not just films, like any form of art, is a wholesomeness, a completeness to it. When I purchase a product, okay, let's say a car, okay, I would be any day happy with a car that has gotten everything right within its limitations. So you can't emulate an Audi or a BMW or a Bentley in a car that's going to cost you just 10 lakhs.
Right.
There is a craftsmanship. Even for your interiors, you choose material. You are trying to, like lot of these automobile companies, they try to emulate an Audi and a BMW, but in a car that's just worth 10 lakh. Okay. So what do you do then? You are impressed with the design of that door, like design of your dashboard, design of your steering, and you're trying to recreate that with a different material. But that's not where the experience is. The experience is what you see, what you feel, and like how you use it. Like when you use it, there is an experience. So there are multiple senses that is at play, right? When you're speaking about experience, and film is an experience. So there are multiple senses of a human being at play. So if you look at it that way, then you would want to do justice to everything possible. Every form of art that you bring in, you want it to be in the right proportion and in the right way possible.
Right.
And that's what those are the kind of filmmakers. That's the kind of philosophy like I've really admired, and that's a very important quality in films for me. Where you just can't have a song for the sake of it. You
Right.
just can't recreate a song because you have liked such a song in another film. In the second half, you see this mansion, right? Like where Valleya stays.
Right.
So within the budget that you have, you are going for a vibe. As much as you are trying to build a spectacle there, like a visual spectacle there, you are also going for mood. Because like the first couple of shots, you are establishing your place and you're done with it, right? And whoever is watching it, they are amazed by it, right? After that, for the rest of the film, they got to dwell in that house.
Right.
So then you're trying to see like how can you create life in there, and how with the lighting, with what kind of lighting, with what kind of walls, so that like experience is immersive and it is sustainable. That's what I am going in for as a filmmaker, and I think like everybody has their own journey.
Interesting. Another aspect of storytelling, I know every director has their own way of looking at films and interest of films. But, when it comes to regional films in comparison to Bollywood, that's a different game altogether for storytelling. I watch a lot of Tamil, Malayalam, and Telugu films,
Okay.
and there's a huge difference in terms of the format of storytelling in comparison to Bollywood. Even today, the conversation, there's more to Indian film than just Bollywood films, to be very honest.
Right. Right.
Prime example is Jallikattu representing India today at Oscars this year. And
Right.
apart from the splurge in the budgets,
Mhm.
where do you think is the gap in the way films are perceived and promoted regionally in comparison to Bollywood? And if there is, what do you think is done differently in both worlds?
So as you mentioned, I think there is a convergence that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it is with the writing. In terms of writing, you got to be very honest to whom you are and like which culture you come from. Not to be mistaken that you got to glorify your culture, but
Right.
there is your upbringing, and you can't step out of it because you have watched it in another film,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you have to bring your sensibilities to it, your understanding to it. So when that is essential, and in that sense, looking at it in that sense, you are going to have a number of films that you are not going to relate to,
Mm.
though they are great films,
Right.
right? So that is one. And the second, I think where I would like to see a change, not a change, but then maybe things are moving towards that is like how do you have a same pedestal for every one of this creation?
Mm.
So it shouldn't be depending on the industry that it's coming from. Of
Right.
course, language is going to be a barrier,
Right.
and it's okay. It's okay to have that barrier, and that's how it's defined. There are few films that non-Tamil speaking, well receptive crowd even are
Mm.
not going to relate to. There are a few Tamil films which are extraordinary Tamil films, which are not going to appeal to a non-Tamil speaking crowd out there and a very sensible crowd. I'm not speaking about like ignorant section of
Mm.
people.
Mhm.
Even if you are so receptive, there are few Tamil films that will never appeal to you, and there are few Marathi films that will never appeal to me.
Right.
Okay, but that doesn't matter as long as a story is told. I wish there is a relatively impartial pedestal that all films should enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Mm.
and that has to come in with a production house, and the business part of films plays a very important role there. I
Right.
feel.
Right.
To give you an example, there is a system in South Africa,
Mm-hmm.
like where there is a theater group who screen films across theaters,
Mm-hmm.
not just across theaters, across spaces. Okay, they have their own setup. Let's say like it's like touring talkies in one sense.
Okay.
Okay, and there is also like they have their projector, they have their infrastructure, which they can walk into a college, set it up, and convert the auditorium of that college into a theater for the next 10 days
Mm-hmm.
so that they showcase a bunch of films that they have purchased
Nice.
and they share it with the filmmakers, whatever their revenue model is. But they were able to crack something like this because they care for the films that are being made out there.
Right.
So otherwise, like they can't come up with something like this. And this doesn't just stop there; it extends beyond that. Not just setting up theater, but they also hire a few theaters.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't call it a PVR, rather a PVR has partnered with, let's say, Dakshin,
Mm-hmm.
and Dakshin is an exhibitionist.
Mm-hmm.
And Dakshin pays PVR, and Dakshin takes a bunch of films every year to all screens in PVR.
Mm-hmm.
And what Dakshin specializes in is taking these independent films from his regional language and showcasing it elsewhere.
Right.
And the revenue model is for you to figure out. But all that comes from a goodwill, right? Comes from a love for a particular thing that you enjoy, and you also want to exhibition it to a bunch of people. And there is some fairness in it, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I feel is slightly missing right now. And I'm actually very happy we are all trying different ways to do that.
Right.
And in no time we'll achieve a new way.
Right. Makes sense. You're continuing the conversation of the business side of the film. Because of COVID, like Mara, a lot of films could not have a theatrical release, and it launched on Amazon Prime instead of a
Mhm.
theater. From a business wise, Dilip, just to understand how fruitful or compromised are OTT releases in compared to screens?
I think we are all still figuring out even the OTT. I don't think the OTT platform, having dealt with Prime and Netflix
Mm-hmm.
for both of my films, they are huge. They have got the infrastructure. They've got the technology, and the technology that's proven that is in accordance with the standards of the internet speed, the viewing capabilities on all devices. So they have cracked that model, which is
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. We didn't have this in 2005 or even 2010. Right now, your particular player, Amazon's player and Netflix player, knows exactly to adapt to the standard internet standards across the world and the screen quality of your mobile to your home theater to the biggest that you can think of, right?
Mhm.
So on those grounds, you are very satisfied as a filmmaker, as somebody like who has created something, you're very satisfied.
Mhm.
But when it comes to how prepared are these platforms to take a film to premiere on theirs,
Mhm.
on their particular platform? I don't think we are there yet.
Okay.
A film goes through 2 years of process, right? Like there is you are going to take at least a year to make a film,
Mhm.
and finally, when it comes to premiering it, premiere is nothing but a celebration,
Mhm.
and after that, it's going to be there forever. It becomes your archive. So
Mhm.
your premiering platform and the premiere day is a celebration, and then it becomes a platform.
Mhm.
Now, how indifferent you are as an exhibitionist to give the same kind of celebration to all your titles. So does Mara get the same kind of celebration as compared to Surarai Potru?
Mhm.
It doesn't. There is a difference in the way how Mara is premiered and to where all Mara is taken and how
Right.
much Mara is taken as
Right.
compared to another film. So there, I think like when we have come this far, let's also make that a little more equal, right?
Right.
Like as an audience, like I still have my own preference. I'm going to watch Surrey Potre or another film on the first day, whereas Gulabo Sitabo or
Right.
Mara, I'm going to wait out.
Right.
So that's different. But as an exhibitionist, are we all ready to celebrate films? This is a paradigm shift. Now,
Mhm.
what has happened?
Absolutely.
And from theaters, you have brought it to your home screens and your mobile,
Mhm.
and that's where your film is premiering. And there is no immediate gratification.
Right.
Apart from Twitter, there is an immediate gratification for what you have done,
Mhm.
whether it's positive or negative, whatever it is. Like when you sit in a theater and watch it with the audience, like you are there is that's what we call it as premiere and an opening, right?
Right.
So in what all ways are these platforms ready to do it is a question. I
Mhm.
think they are all still getting ready to do that,
Mhm.
and it is going to take some time for them to do it. And as of the business part is concerned, like money is concerned, I'm not a producer, and I've stayed away from it. I don't know much about it, but Mara is a profitable venture
Mhm.
for them. So on those grounds, we are happy. But is that all you need? Is a question. Yeah.
And you think a release in the theaters would have been more profitable for the business in terms of the kind of reviews that you're getting in comparison to OTT?
I don't know. Like I'm a very I'm new to this whole
Right.
thing, right? Like
Right.
I don't think like there are speculations that I can do, but I can't be certain about it. Mara releasing on OTT is a superb thing that could have happened to Mara in a way,
Mhm.
because there are like I'm doing an interview with you. I don't know like if there would be an interstate print for the
Right.
film, if
Right.
not for a platform like this.
Right.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah, but it also aids. Like I go onto the streets, like if there is a kirana shop here, like whom I ask them, like have they watched Mara, and they don't know what I'm speaking about. So imagine, like in Chennai, it's your hometown, and you have made a film exclusively in Tamil, and
Uh-huh.
you go out to your tea shop and you're striking conversation. You want to know if people have watched it and whether they have liked it. But
Uh-huh.
it comes as a surprise when they ask you, like, what am I speaking about? They tell me that they know about Master, yeah, but they don't know about this film. So, how much of on ground, like the marketing that a particular Amazon does or Netflix does,
Mhm.
is it enough?
Right. Right. Makes sense. Great stuff, Dilip. That kind of brings us to the end of first round of questions. I'm quickly moving on to our next round of questions. This is a rapid fire round. So a few
Okay.
short, exciting questions are coming your way.
Okay.
So ready for this?
Yes.
Okay. Your favorite filmmakers are?
Dennis Villeneuve, and in terms of how one has honed his craft, I think Maniratnam is a phenomenal filmmaker.
Right.
Like in terms of filmmaking as a craft, I'm bowled over by what he does even today.
Mhm.
On top of my mind, these are the two people.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your favorite review about Mara that you have read?
Oh, there is somebody who text me saying, I don't know much about films and I don't know Tamil. I don't know English or Tamil, but this film made me happy. And like that as a reason, she had let another film go. Like,
Wow.
like she was a little afraid, like, what if that other film doesn't work for her and put her in a different spot, like take her away from the feeling that Mara had given her. She doesn't know anything about films. She doesn't even speak Tamil or English. So the communication itself was very tough. Like that was very filling, like all this technique that we are speaking about, everything about continuity and all such things
Mhm.
is to finally evoke an emotion.
Yeah.
And somebody who isn't interested in filmmaking as a process, they're telling you that it has appealed to them.
Super. Which is your favorite scene in Mara and why?
My favorite scene in Mara is it's a flashback in the second half, like where
Mhm.
the doctor's character and Mara are sitting under the tree.
Right.
And before he leaves, he speaks to her and says, like, okay, I'm gonna leave and I'm gonna take off. You can
Mhm.
stay here however long you want. And that is my favorite scene in the film right now.
And why so?
I think that's one point like where a lot of things came together.
Mhm.
The camera work, the music, the actors, and the weather that day, the atmosphere, that
Right.
particular moment when we were trying to shoot, like the skies and everything about it. I thought like, okay, so this scene had to happen and not completely planned.
Mhm.
Like if the weather would have been a little brighter, if the skies were a little brighter or a little more darker, it's a difference.
Mhm. Okay.
You have an imagination for every scene. You wanted to emulate a certain emotion and evoke a certain emotion inside you. And that scene for me exceeded what I had on paper there. It was a very functional scene on paper.
Very nice. Your recommended equipments or favorite lens to own or shoot with?
I don't know if I prefer something like that yet.
Okay. Okay. Your thoughts on mobile filmmaking?
It's great as much as filmmaking can be democratized. It's good for all of us.
Right. Right. Okay. And finally, what's next for you?
I'm working on a subject with something that I've been interested on like for past 1 year. Like the first time that it occurred to me it was a year back or a little more than that. In fact, 1.5 years it should be, and it has always been in the back of my head and on pages as like short notes and incomplete synopsis. But after 1.5 years since the first time it was taught, it still appeals to me. It still speaks to me. So I think like that's what I want to do next.
Okay. Super. Well done, Dilip. Great set of answers there. And it's now time to move to the last segment of the show. And this is a question from Ankush Patil, who asks, what are 5 things from your personal filmmaking experience that one should learn from or do while making a short film or a commercial film?
Okay, first of all, fully bound script.
Mhm.
All improvisations can happen next, but fully bound script is much needed before you head out to do anything.
Mhm.
And then comes a clear short division of like even if you're not going to follow those short divisions, but a clear short division is going to help in a lot of ways. Like in fact, your producer it's going to help a lot, and as a creator, it's going to do something to the film.
Mhm.
Like it's not maybe it's a taxing thing for you, but I think it's a right justice to do through the script because it's a visual medium. So how not to imagine your visuals before you go for the shoot? At
Mhm.
least like you should be having about every scene you should be having a thing. So that's number two. And the third in line is to collaborate with people like who know really like in real sense they can teach you something to
Mhm.
their craft. A cameraman like who can guide you like you have few ideas, you have few themes and you have few emotions that you want to bring out,
Mhm.
but there is a certain lensing, there is a certain tempo and with which the scene has to be captured, so the shot has to be captured, right? So never shy away from people who know more than you because everybody knows more than us,
Right.
right? So to collaborate with people who are at the top of their game and who can teach you what you don't know.
Mhm.
So that vulnerability is going to help me as a filmmaker.
Right.
So that is a very important thing. And at every stage during pre-production, we are only thinking about pre-production and not thinking much about production. But
Mhm.
there are things that happen on the shoot day,
Mhm.
and when you're shooting, there are things that are gonna change your film on the post-production table. So whenever we hit a low point in writing, we always decide that okay, we'll fix this in shoot. And when we hit a low point on the shoot day, we decide that, okay, we'll fix it in the post. So then every stage of filmmaking shouldn't be remembered only when you need a fix.
Mhm.
Rather, in a very constructive way, you have to think about all these stages and maybe have a conversation with those technicians of like, what do you think should be the edit of this scene?
Mhm.
Should be the music of this scene.
Right.
You need not compose, you need not edit, you need not storyboard, but at least have a conversation so that like you end up giving enough respect to every process of filmmaking,
Mhm.
even from the start. I think that we all lack. Like there are multiple places, like I'm no exception. Whenever there is a fix that is needed, we immediately say like, okay, let's fix it in the edit.
Right.
Yeah.
Excellent. Great stuff, Dilip. That brings us to the end of today's episode. I had a wonderful time taking notes on everything about filmmaking and your journey to making this cinematic experience like Mara. I hope you had a good time on the Deliberate Talks podcast.
I love talking to you, Dakshin. Thanks for inviting me. Podcast is next to music for me.
Mhm.
So I consume a lot of podcasts.
Wow.
And I wish we had more podcasts here in
Mhm.
India. On that note, what you're doing, I have a huge respect for it, and I think you're doing a great job. Thanks for that.
Thank you so much. And I really wish all the very best for your projects to come after Mara as well. And look forward to meeting you as well in the near future and exchanging notes on this. Thank you so much for your time,
Same,
Philip. Really
same.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And that's it for today's episode. If you all haven't seen the film yet, you can go straight to Amazon Prime and watch the film in different South Indian languages with English subtitles. If you have any questions on filmmaking, you can write to me at thedeliberatetalks@gmail.com or connect with me on the social media channels and the audio platforms. Join in this Monday for yet another episode with an expert. Until then, please take care of yourself and don't forget to inspire and be inspired.